Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Swaziland Grab Sample Systems presentation. As I mentioned earlier, we are recording this session. If you have any questions as we go through our slides, please just feel free to raise your hand or ask the question in the chat. Sorry, did somebody say something? Okay. Yeah, please post your questions in the chat. We have some of our field engineers online that could answer in the chat, but I could also answer you if you just ask a question while we're running through the presentation. Okay, so the agenda for today's presentation, we're going to look at grab sampling as an overview. We'll look at the basic rules of sampling. Then we'll look at sample container selection and best practices. We'll look at sampling safety. And then lastly, we'll have a look at viscous sampling. Okay, so what is grab sampling? So grab sampling is a collection of a sample of fluid in a pipeline, a tank, or a system. So normally when you do grab sampling, you want to transport this sample to your laboratory, whether it's on-site or off-site for analysis. So there's many different types, but they're basically in two broad categories. You will either take your sample in a sample cylinder, or depending on the media, you can also do it in bottles, whether it's glass bottles, metal canisters, or plastic bottles. But we'll get through when would you choose what option. Then some other names we see in industry for grab sample systems is spot samplers, laboratory sampler, or a field sampler. Okay, so why would you use grab sampling? So firstly, you want to validate your process conditions. So you want to make sure whatever you're producing is up to standard. Then you want to validate whenever you send out products to a customer that it meets the end customer specifications. Okay, so loading platforms, reference samples of sold products is something you want to keep record of. Then also for evaluating the environmental emissions according to local regulations. So whether it's water going into sewer systems to make sure they don't fall outside of regulations. But lastly, and probably the most important one we see customers use grab sample systems for, is for the validation of their online samplers or their online analyzers to make sure whatever those online analyzers is telling them is actually correct, and which the online analyzer is making changes to their process, it's not doing it incorrectly. So if we look at the basic rule of sampling, whether it's with an online sampler or grab sampling like we're discussing now, you want that sample to be representative. So the sample must be the same as the process that you're taking it from. So we want to avoid phase changes in the sampling system or during transportation. So a good way to do that is use probes. So when you use a probe, you sample from the middle of the pipe or the process line, so you get the entire media from the pipe and not only the heavier stuff that gets stuck on the side walls. Then you want it timely. Okay, so you want to understand when the sample was taken. There's no point taking a sample when you only evaluate it 2 days later, for instance. Then it doesn't really tell you what's going on in your process now. So you also need to make sure that sample point and where it's situated, that sample is representative of what's happening in your system now. So for instance, if you sample from a tank and you don't have a free-flowing system and your sample point is, for instance, let's say 20 meters away, and you only sample 100 or 300 mils at a time, you could be sampling things that happened days ago. So it would not really give you a representative reading of what's in that tank at that point. It could be stuff that's happened days ago. Okay, so we need to minimize transport time from the process to the sample container, and not as important as with online analyzers. With online analyzers, you generally want your response time to be within 1 minute. With grab sampling systems, that's a little bit more. Okay, then you also want your sample to be pure, so you don't want any contaminant in the sample because you want to allow for adequate purging and flushing. You want to use clean sample containers, and then also avoid dead legs on the upstream side of a sample container. So you don't want any media stuck from a previous sample that was taken to basically contaminate what's in your container when you take that sample. Okay, so when we look at sample container selection, how do you select the type of system and the sample container? So firstly, if your media is toxic, a sample cylinder is definitely a better option due to the fact if your glass bottle falls in the lab or on the way to the lab, it could affect the personnel handling that sample. So in that option, or in that sense, when it's toxic, make sure you steer away from glass or plastic and go for sample cylinders. When you're looking at cost, bottles are a lot less expensive than sample cylinders, but like I mentioned, they do have their drawbacks. When we look at the sample pressure, bottles are not pressure containing. Okay, so if you want to sample something, obviously high pressure gas you cannot sample in a bottle, or high pressure liquids, then you want to steer towards a sample cylinder. Now, if your sample is volatile, bottles can be used for non-volatile liquids, but when you have volatile liquids, you need to stick to a cylinder so you can contain that volatile liquid if that phase changes. So if it heats up and the pressure builds, it's better to have it in a sample cylinder. You will see later how we avoid any sort of damage to our sample cylinder by utilizing outage tubes, where you don't have that option when you do glass bottles or plastic bottles for that matter. Okay, so firstly, we'll look at sample cylinders and the assembly of them. They range basically from 10 milliliters all the way to 1 gallon, which is 3.8 liters. You can get them single-ended or double-ended. Needle valves is the most common valves that we will see on these sample cylinders. The reason for this is they are trip-proof. So what do I mean by trip-proof? For instance, if you had to have a ball valve on the end of one of these cylinders, and a guy accidentally knocked that 90-degree actuation, you could spill that sample, again, either in your lab or on the vehicle transporting your sample. Where a needle valve is a multi-turn valve, so it can't just accidentally trip open and expose your sample to the atmosphere. Then another common thing we see on the sample cylinder assemblies is quick connect fittings, just due to it's an easier way to make sure you connect them to your panel where you're going to take the sample, so they clip in. We also use the quick connects to make sure the sample cylinder stays in the orientation we want it. You will see when we start looking at the outage tube in the next slide, why it's important for you to have quick connects and to make sure that orientation doesn't change. Because if you have that sample cylinder upside down, basically what will happen is your outage tube does not work anymore, so it will fill the entire cylinder rather than giving you a little bit of vapor space. Then we can add bypass lines for purging. So if you look at the smaller cylinder of the two up on my slide deck now, you will see it has a line running around the cylinder. So if there's any toxic gases, what we can do is the way we design the cylinder is after you've taken the sample, we basically back purge it with nitrogen or steam, either one of the two, to blow all of your connections clean to make sure there's no exposure to toxicity when you basically disconnect that system. Then some other accessories we can add to a cylinder. We can do carrying handles, we can do coatings on the inside, and then also overpressure protection in the form of either a rupture disc, or we can do a relief valve with another sample cylinder connected next to it. But those are all different design options we can add to one of these assemblies. Now, when we look at sample cylinders and the best practices with them, you always want to fill them in a vertical orientation. Whether it's for gas or liquid, we will basically fill it in a vertical orientation. Okay, when we look at liquid, we will fill liquid from the bottom of the cylinder. This allows the gas to escape out the top, and we use an outage tube to avoid that overpressurization of the cylinder. So if we look at the picture on the right-hand side, as you fill the cylinder up from the bottom, once your media hits the bottom section of your outage tube, it will start flowing through the outage tube and back into your system, leaving a vapor space. Now, this vapor space is for that volatile liquid. So once that volatile liquid heats up, the overpressurization will go into this vapor space, and it won't affect your sample cylinder by basically making it swell, or it could get to a point where it could actually blow that cylinder or crack it, and you get your media exposed to the atmosphere. Then when we look at gas, when we take a gas sample, we want to fill from the top of the cylinder all the way down. The reason for this is we want any liquid droplets to go out the bottom or to shoot straight through. We don't want liquid in our gas sample, because generally when you look at gas chromatographs, when you do that sample in the lab, they are not susceptible to having liquid in them. So you want to make sure you only do a gas sample, blow any moisture that could be stuck in that cylinder out. And then consider purging your quick connects before you take a new sample to make sure there's not old samples stuck in them, especially if you have a double-ended shut-off quick connect, they can capture a little bit of sample in them. So it's always good to run a purge through them before you start taking new samples, just to avoid any sort of contamination. So here you can see what it would look like if you have a cylinder that runs into an overpressurization situation. So the wall would crack and you would basically have all of your media coming out the side of it. So this is generally thermal expansion of liquid. They can damage cylinders, especially when they're 100% full, because that liquid, as it expands, has nowhere to go if there's no vapor space, and they would just basically make your cylinder fail. Now, there is ways to avoid this if you're not going to do an outage tube. You can also add the relief valve, like I mentioned earlier, or a rupture disc. The only problem with rupture discs is when that rupture disc fails, again, the operator or the lab technician will be exposed to that media that's in that cylinder. So making sure that you have an outage tube and you don't overfill the cylinder is a much safer option than going for a rupture disc that could expose people and the laboratory or the vehicles to whatever the media is. Okay, so now next up, if we look at sampling into a bottle, there's a few different options which you can do. So firstly, we can do a metal can, okay? So they typically use for high temperatures and high viscosity samples. So you will see at the end, our last few slides talks about the high viscosity samples, but they work well for high viscosity samples just due to the ease of getting the sample in and out, and also it won't get affected by the higher temperatures. The next up, this is probably one of the more common ones, is an open top bottle. They can be glass or plastic. You don't have to worry about vapors. So you basically do this in a non-toxic sample. So for water sampling or anything that cannot give off any toxic gases, they can be clear vinyl coated to make them shatterproof or shatter resistant. So if you knock it by accident, it doesn't break apart and spill everywhere. And then lastly, you can get the same glass bottle, but with a cap or a septum. So this will contain some of the vapors and spills, but again, it's not going to contain high pressures. It will only contain the vapor at atmospheric pressures. And also when you do samples with septums, you basically require a fill and vent needle to pierce that septum. So when you take your sample, you basically have two needles. So change my slide, where you can see both needles pierce through that septum. So one will be your filling needle and the other one would vent off the air that is in that bottle at the time of sampling. Okay, so some best practices, we use a sample valve. This controls the flow into the bottle. Various valve configurations are available, so you can have angle pattern, straight pattern. You can even do a spring return handle. So as soon as your operator lets go of that ball valve handle on the left, it will automatically close itself off. So a lot of people know spring return handles as a dead man's handle. So if your guy, hopefully not, drops dead, the valve will close and you don't have overfilling of that cylinder. Then other things we add into our sample cylinder or into our sample systems is we put a shroud around that bottle to hold it and protect the bottle. Okay, just to make sure the guy only has to operate the valve, not try and hold the bottle in place, make sure the needles don't move, and then things can go wrong. So all you have to do is once those needles pierce that septum, you literally just have to open your valve, fill your bottle, and close it back up. Bottles, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. There is a question in the chat, a couple of questions. The one is, what is the certification possibilities on the sample cylinders? And the second question is, why is the maximum vapor pressure limited to 1 bar? This is a bit low.
Okay, so let me just quickly see. Somebody asked, which examples of toxic liquids typically in oil and gas upstream selection? So I want to say toxic liquids you want to avoid is anything that has sour gas in it. So H2S is probably not something you want to be exposed to. You will trip all of the sensors, including your personal gas detector. So that's probably one I would say you want to avoid. Yeah, so Keenan also replied saying hydrocarbons can be sampled and they have H2S, so sour gas. Then to Skulk's question, what is certification possibility on sample cylinders? So standard specifications on our sample cylinders is the DOT standard, and you can also have it with TPED if you want to transport that cylinder, Skulk. And then why is the maximum 1 bar? So the thing is, we generally just say 1 bar as a reference point, because when you have liquids just coming out into atmosphere, it's normally at atmospheric 1 bar. So if you can probably put more into it, but remember with your vent needle, anything above 1 bar is just going to vent out anyway. So it will naturally stay at 1 bar, even though you put in 5 bar. The pressure will dissipate through your vent needle. So it should generally just stay at 1 bar. I hope that answers your question. See if there's any other. Okay, Lindy, will you just tell me if any other questions pop up? I don't see the chat until I look at it.
Will do.
Okay, so now we're going to look at types of grab sample systems. So the first one is gas sampling. Then we'll look at volatile liquid sampling, and then just talk about liquid sampling in general. So the next few slides are basically just a schematic of a gas sampling system and how it would work with the purge valves and you running a fast loop through the cylinder. So as I change the slide, you will actually see how the media enters. So any red will be high pressure, the blue will be low pressure. So you'll get an idea of how these cylinders work. So this is a basic schematic of a grab sample system. So this one is for gas. So we'll have our sample supply at the top. We have our either sample disposal, or you can go back into your system. So you can run the fast loop either to flare or back into your system. You just need a slight pressure drop or a delta P across your supply line and your disposal line to make sure you have actual flow running through that system. Okay, so we'll open the cylinder up or the panel up. We add our cylinder into the system. Okay, make sure everything is connected. Just want to make sure it changes for everybody. So now you can see everything is at low pressure. So let's say this is the first time you install this. So when we switch the valve to sampling, you will see the red, our sample supply line will come in. We'll start filling our cylinder up all the way. Our gauge will show that we now have pressure on the downstream side of the cylinder. So you will see it's important where our gauge is situated. Like I mentioned earlier, you don't want your gauge to be a dead leg that can contaminate your system afterwards. So it's better to have it on the downstream side of your cylinder rather than the upstream side. So you can still see whether there's pressure in the system or not, but it doesn't cause any sort of contamination. Okay, so once we've got our system flowing, you can flow it for a little bit to make sure you get a nice full cylinder and that all the any sort of air or nitrogen which you use to purge your cylinder is completely washed out. Okay, now we close the valves on our cylinder because we want to capture that sample. Okay, once we've got our cylinder sampled, we're going to switch our sampling valve to vent. Okay, and then when you push this little handle at the bottom, we basically vent out. Sorry. Here we go. Then it vents out all the connections at the inlet and the outlet of our sample cylinder, making sure that there's no pressure when our operator disconnects the sampler or the cylinder. So here you can see now my system is completely pressureless. My gauge shows 0, and I can safely remove that sample cylinder and send it to my lab. A good practice to do as well is to make sure that you connect your hose quick connect back to the quick connect at the top of the panel just to keep any contamination from the plant out. So anybody that comes and washes the plant down or sprays down the cylinder, or if there's any leakages from above, it stays out of your system rather than leaving it open and getting contamination into your system. Okay, so next up is volatile liquid sampling. So this is where we make sure we have an outage tube. So now we will basically fill the cylinder from the bottom up, where we had the gas filling from the top down. So again, open up our system, add our cylinder into the panel. Okay, so when we switch to sampling again, now you will see, start. Okay, for some reason this thing has decided to start. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now you can see my cylinder fills up from the bottom upwards. Once it hits the outage tube on the inside of my cylinder, it basically gives me that blue vapor space. I can again see on my gauge that's now downstream of my cylinder again, that I've got pressure in my cylinder. We'll flow it through that cylinder. Again, same thing, close our valves on our cylinder to capture our sample in place. Then when we switch to the vent, same thing will happen. We push down on that handle, and all of the pressure on the inlet and the outlet of that cylinder will be drained out. Give it a second to... Okay, so again, now you can verify that there's no pressure. Your gauge has gone down. So your operator removes the cylinder, connects it back, same as we did with the gas sample, and then we can send that cylinder to our lab. So now you can see after taking that sample, I still have that vapor space available, and that will make sure if the sample heats up and it starts to increase in pressure, it will fill into this vapor space and not damage my cylinder like you saw on those previous pictures. Now, some other options we can do when we do bottle sampling, you can have a continuous flow option. So what I mean by continuous flow is you will have an inlet and an outlet that will always be flowing, whether you're taking a sample or not. But due to the fact that you have a non-return or spring return valve on your needle assembly, once you put your bottle in, you take your sample, then you know you've got a nice fresh sample. So this is always current process running through your system. Then another option we can do is we can do a fixed volume sampler. So if you want to make sure that the operator can never overfill the bottle, so for instance, if you know your bottle is 500 ml, we can build a fixed volume sampler where you have a 500 ml sample cylinder at the back of the panel. Okay, so once you run your system, this cylinder, if we look at the little green bulge in the middle of my drawing here, will fill up with the complete 500 ml sampler. Once you basically open the valve at the bottom to dispose that sample into the cylinder, it closes the system off, and you have a nitrogen purge that opens and then pushes this exact 500 ml into that glass bottle. So there's no way for you to overfill the bottle. So to make sure you always get a consistent amount of sample and no overfilling or spillage in your plant, this is quite a good option to use. Then when it comes to all of our grab sampling panels, we can give you full documentation of it. So you get an engraved place card on the panel with instructions, a schematic, and then you get a sales and an as-built drawing and 3D models of these panels. So for future reference, you could literally see exactly all the parts that's on there. So if you have to do any sort of maintenance, you could just refer back to the drawing, and it will tell you exactly what the parts are. Now, the nice thing is if you have a complex sampler where you have to include all sorts of coolers, let's say a fixed volume, if you look at the back of the panel on the left-hand side, it actually looks quite complex. But if you look at the front of the panel where your operator is, it actually is quite simple. So you have a one handle operation depending on the valve or the panel that you pick. So the guys can't really do something incorrectly. In the older panels that we see in some of the older plants, there's about 6 to 7 valves on some of these panels that you have to switch in the exact orientation if you don't do it correctly, what will happen is you could end up sending direct your process line through to your vent or to your drain. So you could just blow product down a drain line for hours just by doing something incorrectly. So if you look at these panels, we can either have the two-way or the three-way switching valve, depending on what the panel has to do. So if it's just a simple in and out, we use the two-way switching valve. And then if we start adding vent lines and purge lines, then we have the three-way option as well. But it all comes down to just having one handle to operate all of it. So that makes it a lot more simpler and safer for your operators to work on. Then obviously you want to standardize throughout your plant. So every time the customer takes a sample, the operator, sorry, takes a sample, the panel he uses for taking one type of sample, you basically have the same one on the next one. So he doesn't have to learn various different panel options and how to do it correctly. So you can see the panel on the left is called our GSM panel. And then we've got our GSL for liquid on the right. And then we've got our GS valve, which is the blue with the shroud for taking the bottle. And our GSC is basically our grab sample cylinder. And then they all come in all various different configurations and options. So these are, like I mentioned, for gas sampling, and then either just liquid or your volatile liquid. So this covers all of those processes. Then the last thing I want to talk about before we end our presentation for the day is sampling of viscous liquids. So this is quite a big problem in a lot of plants, just due to the fact of taking samples that are really viscous. They tend to plug up, they have to be at high temperatures, and they're quite dangerous to use. So many different applications is, for instance, slurries or waxes. And if you look at your distillation tower residue or your bottoms, as most people in the refineries will know it, they are quite viscous. So it's like a thick oil or a grease type of application that needs to be sampled. Now, like I mentioned, you have to keep them at quite a high temperature to make sure they are flowable. Okay, because if it's a solid, you obviously can't sample it into a tin or a can or into a bottle. So if we look at the sliding scale, air sits at a viscosity of 0.02. Then if we look at water, that's basically 1. Then if we go to olive oil, you're sitting at a viscosity or a CP centipoise of 84. Then motor oil goes to 540. Then if we look at maple syrup, then you get to 3,200. If we go to honey, your centipoise score is 12,200. And then obviously molasses sits at 20,000. Okay, so you can see here, if we take a sample and we put it at 300 degrees, my viscosity could be, for instance, 5. Now, as my temperature decreases to 200, that viscosity shoots up to 10, which is still okay. I mean, it's more flowable than olive oil. But again, you can't have people sampling things at 200 because that temperature could be quite dangerous. So now we drop it down to 100. As we go down to 100, my viscosity shoots up again to above 100. So now it's more volatile or more, how can I say, it's less flowable than motor oil, but it's above olive oil. And then once we go to 80, you can see it literally goes almost up to maple syrup. So you can see as the temperature drops to get it to a safer level, the viscosity will shoot up. So you have to get to a point where you can still sample it at a safe temperature, but it needs to be flowable so you can actually sample it. And then you can see as we go to 50, how that viscosity increases to basically 9,000 centipoise. So as the temperature drops, it just goes up and up. And then lastly, when you do it at 20, you're basically at 120,000 centipoise. Okay, so with viscous sampling, there's some important things to remember. You want to keep it hot. You need to keep it flowing, otherwise you can't sample it. You want to keep it clean so you don't get any contamination into it. And then obviously you need to keep it safe. And that's where the balancing act comes in, because it can't be too hot, but it needs to be hot enough to flow. Okay, so this is one of Swagelok's latest product offerings. It's our viscous sampling valve. So it's basically one of our N-series needle valves that we've redesigned so that you can actually have a flow path straight through the valve. And once you open it, you can actually sample any sort of viscous media. So you can have this valve with a purge option as well. So after you've taken your sample, you can purge it out with steam to make sure there's no contamination in there. There's a minimum dead leg, so you're almost taking directly out of the stream. So the dead leg is very, very limited. This valve can handle pressures up to 413 bar. It handles up to 537 degrees Celsius. And it's got a 1/4 inch or a 6.4 millimeter orifice, which is quite large. So to avoid any sort of plugging or clogging up of the valve. And that's a nice feature. If you do know that you can experience a lot of plugging, that's a nice thing where you just connect the steam into your optional purge port and just blow that valve clean before taking any sort of samples. So here you can see a case study that Swagelok Cleveland, Columbus, and Charleston did of one of these valves installed in a plant. So you can see it's literally on their main sample line. It's nice and enclosed. It has a heater in there to keep everything nice and hot. So that just makes it a lot easier to install. Okay, then also within our Swagelok product basket, we have Swagelok Engineering and Field Services. So within this, we offer a grab sampling, evaluation, and advisory service. So where we basically come onto a site, we look at all the panels that you want inspected. We give you a full report on each and every panel, giving you improvement recommendations, any sort of safety concerns, and if necessary, we can redesign the system and make sure it's safe and user-friendly, and then obviously we could end up building it for you. And then lastly, with Swagelok Engineering and Field Services, we want to be more than just a part supplier. We want to work in partnership with our customers. As we are not just a supply house, we focus on your business goals and your challenges to make sure you work your plant safely and without any hassles. And then we've got subject matter experts for your system, not only in South Africa, but worldwide. So if we don't have any of the expertise available locally, we can reach out to our over 400 engineers worldwide to assist us. So here you can see you can get local support, local solutions, and you get global support. Okay, and that's the end of it. Anybody want to unmute for any questions? Lindy, I don't know if there's any questions online.
I don't see any questions.
Jackson, yes, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I just wanted to find out, I've seen that you can do the grab sampling on a continuous flow, right? What I wanted to know is your equipment, what parameters does it analyze? Can it analyze multiple parameters, for example, pH, TDS, maybe chlorine, fluorine?
Okay, so remember, our system does not do the analytics itself. This is just the system to take the sample. Okay. But we can build the system to accommodate any sort of those type of media. You just need to specify what the media is beforehand, your pressures. Then we can adapt the materials to make sure it can actually work with your system media that you have. So if you want to do, for instance, I don't know, fluorine, we probably have to adapt the material to either go for Monel or Hastelloy C. You can't just use normal stainless steel. But yes, we can adapt for different medias. It's not set on, let's say, just things that work with stainless steel.
Okay, no, I understand.
Yeah, so the actual analysis happens in a lab. Okay. So when they take the sample, they'll take the cylinder or the bottle into the laboratory of the plant or a third-party laboratory, and get it analyzed there. So this system does not run the analysis by itself.
Oh, okay. So it's only just grabbing that sample and then someone must take it. Okay, no, it's fine. Thank you.
Yes. So if you look at systems that work with online analyzers, we also do those, but that's a whole different basically design and assembly, because you need preconditioning panels, you need conditioning systems. Yeah, that's a whole different. But again, we don't do the analyzer itself. We just do all the systems leading up to your analyzer, from your sample probe all the way through to where it basically enters your analyzer.
Okay, and then it can also be channeled into different time frame to collect the sample. I guess I'm right like that. So if I need the sample to be collected each and every hour, then it means it will be able to do that one.
Yes, but that you're going to need a special design. So I know our factory in Cleveland has built an auto sampler where it can automatically switch. But yeah, we need a little bit more information to basically design a system like that. But I know it has been built before. I've seen it actually in person. So it has 2 actuators that open and close the valves, but also the valves then change to ball valves and not needle valves, but they have lockouts on them. So when you close the valve, it has a lockout that kicks in, so you can't trip it like I mentioned in the beginning. But yes, it is possible.
Okay, that's my last follow-up. So the other thing that I'm looking for, it will be, I'm having a stack, right, which is continuously something is going on a stack. So what I want is, I want to maybe daily or on an average for sample to be grabbed, like, so that I can know what is going on the stack, even if it's not analyzing, but just to know, okay, this is at that given time it collected sample. So that it means then you need to modify the existing stack so that you can connect something for grabbing the sample. Am I right?
Yes, you just basically need an outlet port, but with stacks it becomes a bit more complex, because a lot of the stacks don't run at a positive pressure. So that's the only challenging things with stacks. We need to figure out how we get the sample into the cylinder, or however you want to sample it. Probably a cylinder, because it's toxic gases in a stack.
Yeah.
Because it's a bit more tricky. You can't just suck it with a pump. The problem is you can suck the sample, but once you close your valve, the suction stops. So stack sampling with grab sample cylinders is a bit more tricky than, yeah, it requires a bit more conversation. So maybe we can set up a meeting for next week or so, and I can actually come see you.
No, it's fine.
Please post your details just in the chat so we can take note, and then I can set up a private meeting with you.
All right, no, thanks.
Okay, next up, Skalk.
Morning, Reino. Just a question on the liquid sample cylinder. So when you fill it up, you eventually end up with a vapor space, and the vapor in there. How do you ensure that that vapor is clean vapor from the liquid and not leftover vapor from, let's say, a previous sample or from whatever is left in the system?
Okay, so the only way to do that is to nitrogen purge your cylinder before you take the sample, so that you know there's nothing in that cylinder. So what we've seen customers do before is have a purging station that looks similar to the panel. So in the lab, they literally, when they finish taking the measurements, they just plug it in and blow the whole cylinder clean with nitrogen for a minute or so to just get it clean, and then they install it. So then you're obviously going to expect nitrogen when you do your analysis, but then at least you know it's not any other media. And also a good thing to do is mark, either laser engrave or tag your cylinders so that you don't mix cylinder points with one another, because that's something we see on plants often as well. The guys will just chuck all of their sample cylinders on one pile, and they know they need a 300, so they just take the 300 cylinder, go get their sample, where it should, you should obviously use the same cylinder for the same sample point, or at least have one and one spare. You shouldn't be mixing and matching the things. And if you nitrogen purge them, then you can expect your vapor to be nitrogen.
Right. Reino, just a follow-up question, last one. So you've got this grab sample system. Is there any typical problems or challenges that this solves in the industry? Obviously, you've built it because. So what typical challenges do we find in the system or in the industry where we can use your system and solve those problems? It's maybe a bit of an open question.
Yeah, that's fine. I think the biggest issue this problem solves is, like I mentioned, it gives you a standard of panels. I mean, if you go look at it across all of the Sasol plants, I mean, you get involved in a lot of the different ones. Each and every panel is different. Whether they're sampling the same gas on one plant compared to another plant, the panel differs. So every time you take a sample, you have to do a different set of working instructions, basically. And with our panel, you cannot mess it up, if I can call it that. A lot of these panels have multiple valves on them. So if you don't know the exact orientation of these valves and how to open them, and I've seen this happen, we've done surveys on plants where I've got the guy and said to him, please take a sample, I want to see how it works. And they literally take that media and blow it down a drain while sampling. And I said to him, why is your vent valve open? And he's like, no, that's just how I've been taught. So, I mean, the incorrect information passes down from generation to generation, and they just, the operators just keep doing it incorrectly. Where if you have this one valve operation, you cannot vent while sampling, it just interlocks itself. So it gets rid of all of those, people problems.
Okay, yeah, so what I've seen is they change our flow rates to the analyzer, and because they take off from the sample system into the bottle or whatever, they adjust the flow rates because it takes too long to fill the bottle. And then they leave, and we have a massive flow rate which consumes obviously probes and so on. So that is one thing. How would you solve that problem in this case?
So the best way is to just your takeoff point from wherever you're going to get your sample from. If they're coming out of the same nozzle or probe, get them to tee off before they basically get into your line that runs to your online analyzer. So your online analyzer line will run separately to where your grab sampling line is. And then take it as closely as possible.
So typically in your fast loop, take it off there, not at the analyzer.
Yes, because also you don't want to take a grab sample after it goes through your fast loop filter, because then you're filtering unnecessary things.
Exactly.
Because your bottle is not susceptible, or your cylinder is not susceptible to any sort of, if there's a little bit of impurities in there, it's not going to make any sort of difference to your bottle, where you can't have that obviously in your online analyzer. So it's better to take it on the fast loop or as close to that nozzle, depending on where your preconditioning system sits.
So, sorry, last one. The possibility of failure, so you have a switchover, a manual switchover. So in other words, you're removing all the selection, valves, and, this one first, and that one, and that one. So you're doing it in a manner where you do three-way switching and you get it done. So is there any other possibility of failure using that system?
The only thing that can really go wrong is if your quick connects fail.
Okay.
If they wear out over time, it's something that can wear out. They have O-rings inside of them. So yeah, that's probably, or if they kink the hose for any reason, damage the hose, those sort of failures. But it's all, mechanical failures. It's not really going to be somebody doing something that incorrectly. Obviously, kinking a hose is now a user error. So if you take the cylinder out without disconnecting a hose and you drop it, you could probably cause quite a bit of damage to your hose. But yeah, as long as you follow the instructions, it's actually pretty clear. Then yeah, the chance of you damaging that system is quite low.
Okay, so it's nothing new. We damage it anyway at the moment. So all right, thanks, Reino. I'll leave the gap for the other guys. Thanks, man.
No problem. Thanks everybody for attending. Have a great day.